The Academy's greatest fear. The simulation begins. Professor Valdris adjusted his breathing apparatus as he gazed across the training amphitheater of the Intergalactic Military Academy. His forearms moved in practice coordination, activating holographic displays that showed the day's lesson plan. The assembled cadets from 17 different species sat in their designated atmospheric zones, each breathing their preferred gas mixture through specialized masks. Today, younglings, we study predator response patterns, Valdris announced, his voice translator converting his native clicks and whistles into standard galactic. You will observe the legendary shadow beast of Kepler, 442b through our advanced containment systems. A nervous ripple passed through the crowd. Even seasoned cadets knew the reputation of shadow beasts. These creatures were apex predators from a world where the sun never shone, evolved in perpetual darkness to hunt by detecting the slightest movement or heat signature. Their chitinous exoskeletons could deflect energy weapons, and their razor-sharp limbs could slice through reinforced steel. Chronal, a reptilian cadet from the desert world of Xerion, raised one of his scaled hands. Professor, why study such creatures? Our defensive protocols clearly state to avoid contact with Class 7 predators. An excellent question, Valdris replied, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's soft lighting. But sometimes, young Chronal, the galaxy does not offer us the luxury of avoidance. The human among them. In the back row, Marcus Webb sat quietly, his simple human features unremarkable among the exotic array of alien physiologies around him. While other cadets wore elaborate protective gear suited to their species, Marcus needed only a basic translation device and atmospheric regulator. He was one of only 12 humans currently enrolled at the Academy, part of humanity's first generation to join galactic civilization. Jixa, an insectoid student with iridescent wings, leaned toward Marcus with curiosity. Human Marcus, your species comes from what classification of world? She asked, her mandibles clicking softly. Earth's classified as Class 5, Marcus replied simply. Though some call it a death world. This caught the attention of several nearby students. Death worlds were rare, planets so hostile that most species considered them uninhabitable. The fact that humans had not only survived but thrived on such a world made them objects of fascination and concern among galactic civilizations. The containment failure. Professor Valdris activated the main display, showing a massive containment pod rising from the chamber floor. Inside, barely visible in the dim lighting it preferred, was the shadow beast. Even through multiple layers of energy barriers, its presence was unsettling. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, its 6 limbs ending in natural weapons that had evolved over millions of years of perfect killing. Note the subject's adaptation to low-light environments, Valdris lectured, pointing with one of his secondary arms. The shadow beast's sensory organs can detect movement from. An alarm suddenly pierced the air. Red warning lights began flashing throughout the chamber as the containment pod's energy reading spiked dangerously. The professor's 4 eyes widened in horror as he saw the readings on his console. Impossible, he whispered. The barriers are rated for Class 9 containment. Nothing should be able to. A sound like tearing metal filled the air as the first energy barrier failed. Then the second. The shadow beast's limbs moved with blinding speed, systematically dismantling each layer of protection with surgical precision. Terror and flight. Panic erupted instantly. Chronal survival instincts kicked in, and he activated his species' natural camouflage, becoming nearly invisible as he pressed against the wall. Jixa's wings buzzed frantically as she tried to take flight, only to remember that the chamber's atmospheric controls prevented aerial escape. Other cadets triggered their emergency beacons, calling for immediate evacuation. Some released pheromones that signaled extreme distress to their species. The disciplined military students became a chaotic mass of terrified younglings as the third barrier began to crack. Professor Valdris fumbled with his emergency controls, trying to activate the chamber's lockdown protocols, but the shadow beast had already begun working on the final barrier. Its movements were methodical, intelligent. This wasn't random destruction, it was calculated escape. Everyone remained calm. Valdris shouted over the alarm, but his own voice betrayed his fear. Emergency teams are en route. Stay away from the containment area. The unlikely stand. While his classmates fled toward the exits, Marcus Webb stood up and walked down the steps toward the failing containment system. His movement was steady, deliberate, completely contrary to every survival instinct that should have been screaming at him to run. "Human Marcus, what are you doing?" Jixa called out in terror. "That creature will kill you." Marcus didn't respond immediately. Instead, he studied the shadow beast as it worked on the final barrier. He could see something his alien classmates couldn't: patterns in its movement, weak points in its seemingly perfect design, and most importantly, the slight hesitation that indicated it was as unfamiliar with this environment as they were with its world. "Professor," Marcus called out calmly, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Can you override the chamber's lighting system?" "What? Why would you? This is no time for." "Can you flood the chamber with full-spectrum light?" Marcus interrupted, still approaching the containment area. "Maximum intensity. Now." The final barrier began to crack. Through the fractures, the shadow beast's true size became apparent. It was even larger than the specifications had indicated, and its natural weapons gleamed with an oily substance that suggested they were not only sharp but venomous. As the barrier finally shattered, Marcus Webb stood alone between a perfect killing machine and a chamber full of terrified cadets, armed with nothing but human stubbornness and a plan that defied all logical thinking. The beast unleashed. Emergency protocol activation. Colonel Thane Morrison was reviewing tactical reports in his office when the Academy's emergency alarm system activated. The sound was different from the routine drills, this was the real thing. His decades of military experience kicked in as he grabbed his sidearm and headed for the command center. The hallways filled with panicked alien cadets and instructors, all fleeing from the direction of the training amphitheater. General Zyker, the Academy's six-legged commander, was already coordinating the evacuation when Morrison arrived at the emergency bunker. "Colonel Morrison," Zyker's translator crackled with stress, "we have a Class 7 containment breach. The shadow beast has escaped and is moving through the Academy. Our security forces cannot establish visual contact, the creature moves too quickly in our lighting conditions." Morrison studied the tactical display showing the beast's movement pattern. Red dots indicated where motion sensors detected something, but the pattern was erratic, suggesting the creature was hunting rather than simply escaping. "What about the cadets in the amphitheater?" Morrison asked. Dr. Nexus, the Academy's chief scientist, manipulated the holographic display with his tentacles. "We lost contact with Professor Valdris 17 minutes ago. Thermal scans show approximately 40 life signs still in the chamber, but we cannot determine their condition." The human approach. General Zyker's multiple eyes focused on Morrison. "Colonel, with respect, your species is not equipped for this type of threat. Perhaps you should coordinate from here while our combat specialists—" "With respect, General," Morrison interrupted, "your combat specialists evolved on worlds where the most dangerous predator was something they could outrun or outsmart through conventional means. Humans evolved alongside creatures that hunted us for sport." The alien command staff exchanged glances. They had studied human history and knew about Earth's dangerous wildlife, but seeing it applied tactically was different from reading reports. Morrison activated his personal communicator. "All human personnel, report to emergency stations. We have a predator situation that requires unconventional tactics." Within minutes, 3 more humans arrived at the command center: Captain Rex Donovan from the Tactical Instruction Department, Major Blake Harrison from Medical, and Sergeant Torres from Security. Each moved with a confidence that puzzled their alien colleagues. Understanding the hunter. Cadet Voss, a slug-like alien with exceptional sensory capabilities, had managed to escape the amphitheater and provided the first eyewitness report. His entire body trembled as he spoke through his translator. "The beast, It did not kill randomly, Voss reported. It seemed to be learning, testing. When the lighting changed to full spectrum, it paused. The human cadet, Marcus Webb, he approached it without fear. Approached it? Dr. Nexus's voice rose in pitch. That's not tactical thinking, that's suicide. Colonel Morrison shook his head. No, Doctor. That's exactly what I would expect from a human facing a predator. We don't run first and think second. We assess, adapt, and attack. The tactical display updated, showing the Shadow Beast had moved into the Academy's main corridor system. Emergency bulkheads were sealing automatically, but the creature was finding ways around them with disturbing intelligence. The price of fear. General Zeiker activated the Academy's defense systems, but each attempt to contain the beast failed. Energy barriers were systematically dismantled, sonic deterrents were ignored, and even the Academy's automated defense turrets couldn't track the creature's movements effectively. It's adapting to our countermeasures faster than we can deploy them, Dr. Nexus reported, his frustration evident. This level of intelligence shouldn't be possible in a simple predator. It's not a simple predator, Morrison explained, studying the creature's movement patterns. It's an apex predator from a world where everything else evolved to either hide from it or fight it. It spent millions of years learning to overcome every possible defense. Major Harrison pulled up biological data on his portable screen. Looking at its physiology, this thing isn't just built to kill. It's built to problem solve while killing. Those aren't just weapons on its limbs, they're tools. The realization struck the alien command staff like a physical blow. They had been thinking of the Shadow Beast as a dangerous animal, but Morrison was describing something far worse, an intelligent, adaptable killing machine that treated hunting as both survival and science. The Academy under siege. Reports began flooding in from throughout the Academy. The Shadow Beast wasn't randomly destroying property or killing indiscriminately. Instead, it was systematically testing the Academy's defenses, learning the layout, and demonstrating an understanding of basic technology that defied classification as mere animal behavior. It disabled 3 security checkpoints without triggering the alarms, Sergeant Torres reported. That's not animal cunning, that's tactical awareness. More disturbing was the pattern of its movement. The creature was herding the evacuating aliens toward specific areas, cutting off escape routes with precision that suggested it understood not just the Academy's layout, but the psychology of its prey. It's playing with them, Morrison realized grimly. On its world, prey that runs in predictable patterns doesn't survive long enough to reproduce. It's evolved to hunt creatures that think. The human plan. While the alien command staff struggled to comprehend facing a predator that could outthink their defensive strategies, the human personnel were already adapting their approach. We need to stop thinking like prey, Morrison announced. Every protocol we have is designed around the assumption that we're the weaker party trying to avoid conflict. But humans didn't become the dominant species on Earth by avoiding conflict. Captain Donovan nodded grimly. We became dominant by being better predators than anything that tried to eat us. The plan they developed would have been considered insane by galactic military standards. Instead of containing the Shadow Beast, they would hunt it. Instead of avoiding engagement, they would force it into situations where its advantages were neutralized. The creature relies on speed, stealth, and superior sensory capabilities, Morrison explained to the increasingly horrified alien command staff. But it's never faced prey that fights back with intelligence and tools specifically designed to kill things like it. As alarms continued to wail throughout the Academy and the Shadow Beast continued its methodical exploration of its new hunting ground, the humans prepared to do what their species had always done when faced with a superior predator. They prepared to prove that sometimes the prey could become the hunter. The last report from the amphitheater had been Marcus Webb's voice, calm and steady despite the chaos around him. Tell them I'm going to try something stupid. If it works, they'll know what to do next. What humans call courage. The counterattack begins. Captain Rex Donovan moved through the Academy's service corridors with the practiced silence of someone who had learned to hunt dangerous prey. Behind him, Sergeant Torres carried equipment that would have puzzled most alien military personnel, crude by galactic standards, but specifically designed for close-quarters combat with large predators. In the command center, Admiral Claxon had arrived from the Galactic Defense Council, his crystalline form flickering with nervous energy as he observed the human tactical approach. "This is madness," Claxon declared, his voice resonating through the chamber's communication system. "Your species is sending 4 individuals to hunt something that has defeated our entire security apparatus." Colonel Morrison didn't look up from his tactical display. "Admiral, your security apparatus was designed to contain prisoners and deter conventional attacks. The Shadow Beast isn't a prisoner, it's a force of nature that happens to be intelligent." The display showed the creature's current position in the Academy's central hub, where it had systematically destroyed every automated defense system. What worried Morrison most was the pattern. The beast wasn't just breaking things randomly. It was dismantling the Academy's defenses in a specific order, starting with long-range sensors and working toward close-range systems. "It's preparing for something," Morrison realized. "It's not just exploring, it's setting up a hunting ground. The human advantage." Meanwhile, Ensign Rex, a young alien cadet who had been trapped in the Academy's library during the initial breach, watched in fascination as Captain Donovan's team moved past his hiding spot. The humans weren't using standard military formations or following conventional tactical doctrine. Instead, they moved like predators themselves. Donovan took point, but he wasn't leading, he was hunting. His movements were deliberate, each step calculated to avoid detection while maintaining the ability to strike quickly. Torres flanked wide, carrying what appeared to be primitive projectile weapons alongside standard energy rifles. "Human Captain," Rex whispered into his communicator, "your tactical formation is unusual. Our military doctrine suggests." "Kid," Donovan's voice was barely audible over the comm, "your military doctrine was written by prey animals. We're not prey." The distinction was becoming clearer to Rex as he observed. Galactic military tactics were primarily defensive, designed around the concept of overwhelming technological superiority or strategic withdrawal. The humans were doing something different, they were stalking. Face to face. The confrontation came sooner than expected. The Shadow Beast had detected the human team's approach and, instead of fleeing as alien tactical models predicted, it had positioned itself for an ambush. Captain Donovan rounded a corner and found himself face to face with the creature. At close range, its size was overwhelming, nearly 4 meters of perfect killing machine, with natural weapons that could slice through reinforced armor. Its multiple eyes fixed on Donovan with an intelligence that was unmistakably predatory. For a moment, predator and prey assessed each other. Then Donovan did something that violated every survival instinct known to galactic civilization. He smiled. "Torres, you seeing this?" Donovan spoke calmly into his communicator. "It's bigger than the report suggested, but look at the stance. It's not sure about us." The Shadow Beast's hesitation was barely perceptible, but Donovan caught it. The creature had evolved to hunt prey that either fled or cowered. It had never encountered something that looked back at it with equal predatory intent. The art of war. Sergeant Torres moved into position, his weapons trained not on the Shadow Beast's center mass, but on its joints and sensory organs. "Captain, it's studying us. This thing's trying to figure out what we are." "Let's help it understand," Donovan replied, then did something that would be discussed in galactic military academies for centuries to come. He charged. Not the desperate rush of terrified prey, but the calculated attack of a predator that had chosen its moment. The Shadow Beast's razor-sharp limbs swept toward him, but Donovan had anticipated the move. He rolled under the strike, came up inside the creature's guard, and drove a specially designed projectile weapon directly into what human tactical analysis had identified as the creature's primary weak point. The weapon wasn't an energy rifle or a standard military sidearm. It was a modified harpoon gun, designed specifically for hunting large, armored predators. The projectile pierced the creature's exoskeleton and delivered a payload of concentrated tranquilizer, not enough to kill, but enough to slow its reflexes. Understanding courage. Back in the command center, Admiral Claxon watched the engagement through security feeds with growing amazement. The humans weren't just fighting the Shadow Beast, they were dominating it through superior tactics and an understanding of predator psychology that his species had never developed. How did they know where to strike? Dr. Nexus asked, his tentacles writhing with excitement. Our anatomical scans showed no obvious weak points. Colonel Morrison pulled up a human tactical analysis of the creature's physiology. We didn't look for weak points, Doctor. We looked for hunting patterns. That joint configuration tells us how it moves, how it strikes, and most importantly, how it thinks. The revelation was staggering. While galactic science had focused on cataloging the creature's strengths, human analysis had focused on understanding its behavior. They had treated it not as a specimen to be studied, but as an opponent to be defeated. Your species approaches combat differently than ours, Admiral Claxon observed. Where we see an insurmountable threat, you see a problem to be solved. No, Admiral, Morrison corrected. We see a predator that's never learned to fear its prey. We're about to give it a lesson in why that's a mistake. The pack mentality. As the Shadow Beast struggled against the tranquilizer, more humans appeared from concealment. They moved with coordinated precision, each taking specific positions that maximized their collective effectiveness while minimizing individual risk. This was pack hunting behavior, something that existed in human genetics long before they developed technology. The Shadow Beast found itself facing not one opponent, but a coordinated group of predators that had evolved specifically to take down threats larger and more dangerous than themselves. It's beautiful, Ensign Rex whispered, still watching from his hiding place. They're not just fighting it, they're teaching it that it's not the apex predator anymore. The Shadow Beast's movements became increasingly frantic as it realized its situation. For the first time in its evolutionary history, it was the one being hunted. The humans had turned its own predatory instincts against it, using its natural behaviors to predict and counter its attacks. Captain Donovan's voice came through the communicators, calm and professional, target secured. Preparing for containment transfer. Medical team, we're going to need some better restraints, this one's going to have trust issues when it wakes up. The engagement had lasted less than 5 minutes. The Shadow Beast, an apex predator that had terrorized an entire galactic military academy, had been neutralized by 4 humans using tactics that defied conventional military wisdom. As the creature was secured and prepared for transport back to proper containment, Admiral Claxon turned to Colonel Morrison with a question that would reshape galactic military doctrine. Colonel, what do you call this approach to combat? Morrison's answer was simple, we call it Tuesday. The price of victory. Aftermath in the medical bay. Major Blake Harrison worked methodically in the Academy's medical facility, treating injuries that ranged from minor cuts to severe psychological trauma. The alien medical staff watched in fascination as he moved between patients with practiced efficiency, applying human medical techniques that often proved more effective than their advanced technology. Counselor Plix, an elderly alien dignitary who served on the Galactic Educational Board, observed the recovery efforts with growing concern. His species had evolved from prey animals, and their medical protocols focused primarily on healing physical wounds. The concept of psychological trauma from predator encounters was still relatively new to galactic medicine. Major Harrison, Plix's voice carried the weight of centuries, we have reviewed the incident reports. Your species' response to the Shadow Beast threat was unprecedented. But we must discuss the casualties. Harrison paused in his treatment of a young alien cadet who was suffering from shock. Counselor, we had 0 fatalities and minimal physical injuries. By any military standard, this was a complete success. That is precisely what concerns us, Plix replied, his antennae twitching with anxiety. Your human cadet, Marcus Webb, sustained significant injuries during his initial confrontation with the creature. Yet he continued to engage until reinforcements arrived. This behavior suggests either poor judgment or what, counselor? Harrison's voice carried an edge that made several alien medical staff step back instinctively. The human way. Lieutenant Briggs entered the medical bay carrying Marcus Webb's personal effects. The young cadet was still unconscious, having sustained 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and severe lacerations from his close encounter with the Shadow Beast. Despite his injuries, preliminary reports indicated he had successfully delayed the creature's advance long enough for evacuation procedures to save 43 alien cadets. Student Korth, an insectoid observer from the Galactic Studies Institute, approached Lieutenant Briggs with obvious confusion. "Lieutenant, I have been reviewing the tactical data from Cadet Webb's encounter. His actions appear to contradict basic survival instincts. Why did he not retreat when the creature escaped containment?" Briggs set down Webb's belongings and turned to face the assembled alien medical staff and observers. Because 43 of his classmates were trapped behind him. In human culture, that's not a choice, it's automatic. The statement created a ripple of discussion among the aliens present. The concept of automatic self-sacrifice for non-family members was difficult for most galactic species to comprehend. Their evolutionary backgrounds emphasized individual or immediate family group survival above broader social obligations. Counselor Plix reviewed the data on his portable device. "Lieutenant, our analysis suggests that Cadet Webb had a 73% probability of survival if he had retreated with the other students. By engaging the creature, his survival probability dropped to 12%. This represents illogical decision-making." "No, counselor," Harrison interjected while monitoring Webb's vital signs. "It represents human decision-making. We don't calculate survival probabilities when people are in danger. We act. Understanding sacrifice." Dr. Nexus arrived with a full analysis of the incident, his tentacles manipulating multiple data screens simultaneously. "Major Harrison, I have been studying human psychological profiles since the Academy began accepting your species. This pattern of self-endangerment for strangers appears consistently across your population. It suggests either a species-wide mental defect or what, Doctor?" Harrison's voice was dangerously quiet. "Or an evolutionary adaptation that we do not understand," Dr. Nexus admitted. "Your species consistently demonstrates willingness to sacrifice individual survival for group benefit, even when the group consists of genetic strangers. This should not be evolutionarily stable." Lieutenant Briggs nodded toward the recovery ward where alien cadets were receiving treatment for trauma. "Doctor, every one of those students is alive because humans don't think like that. When something threatens our people, and anyone who stands with us becomes our people, we don't calculate odds. We fight." The concept was revolutionary for galactic civilization. Most species had developed technology specifically to avoid situations requiring personal sacrifice. They had evolved past the need for individual heroism, creating societies where such behavior was not only unnecessary but actively discouraged as primitive. The cost of courage. As Marcus Webb began to regain consciousness, his first words were not about his injuries or his pain, but about his classmates. "Did everyone get out?" he asked weakly, struggling to focus on Major Harrison's face. "Everyone's safe, son," Harrison replied, adjusting the medical equipment monitoring Webb's condition. "You did good." Webb nodded and closed his eyes, falling back into healing sleep. The simple exchange was observed by a dozen alien medical staff and visitors, each trying to understand the mentality that prioritized others' safety over personal well-being. Counselor Plix approached Harrison privately. "Major, we need to discuss the implications of this incident. If human behavior consistently involves such high-risk decision-making, perhaps your species should be restricted from situations involving galactic citizens. For their own protection, you understand." Harrison's response was immediate and firm. "Counselor, with respect, you've got it backwards. It's not that humans are dangerous to galactic citizens. It's that galactic citizens have been living in a universe where nobody was willing to be dangerous for them. The observation struck home. For centuries, galactic civilization had developed along lines of risk avoidance and technological solutions to physical threats. They had created a society where individual sacrifice was not only unnecessary but virtually unknown. The ripple effect. News of the Academy incident spread quickly through galactic communication networks. The story of humans confronting and defeating a shadow beast sparked debates on thousands of worlds. Some species viewed human behavior as recklessly primitive, while others began to see it as admirably protective. Student Korth compiled a report that would become required reading in xenobiology courses across the galaxy. Human beings appear to possess what they term protective instincts that extend beyond immediate family units to include anyone they consider part of their social group. This behavior results in consistent willingness to accept personal risk for group benefit. The report continued, most significantly, humans appear to expand their definition of social group to include any individuals they perceive as needing protection, regardless of species, genetic relationship, or social status. This behavior pattern suggests that humans may be naturally suited for roles requiring personal sacrifice for collective benefit. As Webb recovered and resumed his studies, alien cadets began approaching him with questions about human psychology and tactical thinking. They were trying to understand not just what humans had done, but why they had done it. The answer, Webb explained to anyone who asked, was simple: because it was the right thing to do. For most galactic species, this explanation raised more questions than it answered. The concept of right and wrong as motivation for life-threatening behavior was as foreign to them as their risk calculation approaches were to humans. But in the Academy's halls, a new understanding was beginning to emerge. Perhaps the galaxy had been looking at human behavior from the wrong perspective. Instead of seeing humans as dangerously unpredictable, they were beginning to see them as reliably protective. The question now was whether galactic civilization was ready for guardians who defined their duties in such absolute terms.